Okay, welcome back, and we are continuing on CSC230 database for web applications. We're learning about MySQL, as I've been doing. Murach's MySQL book. We're now in chapter 6, and at page 170. There's about 20 pages in this chapter, which means there's about 10 things to do, 10 examples, 10 topics that they're covering. And this chapter here is actually pretty short. You should be able to knock it out in less than an hour. It's really detailed in the business rule that it's trying to accomplish in each chapter. And I don't want to stumble through reading the one page and then doing it and trying to explain it all. Rather, I'm just going to use this as a guide. I'll go through, execute the queries, talk lightly about it, but this is one where you really need to read the section and then do the queries. And what's interesting here is this is an accumulation of everything that you've learned so far. We're talking about subqueries. Now, a query is where we're using the where clause or a join. Typically, the joins allow us a way of tackling and getting data as we tie two tables together. We talk about an explicit querying and explicit joins with the where clause, which I like better and which gets used a lot more, but it depends on the situation. Here, a subquery says, do this query first. Get me this answer. I want to know all of this stuff so I can have these IDs that then I can then do a bigger query. And you can go pretty complex in how you build your subqueries. And you can have subqueries and go on. What you need to do is determine, first of all, what is the real question you're trying to answer? What's the data that you're pulling from? And if you were to do this manually, how would you go about doing it? And then ultimately, how do you deal with large databases with millions and millions of records? What becomes the most efficient way of doing it as well for performance reasons and things like that? So there won't be a lot of talking on this chapter. Rather, I'm hoping to use this video basically as a guide to help you say, okay, we're on this page, read it, let's do these queries, okay, let's move on. That's the plan. Okay, please read page 170 and 171, and you'll see an example of a subquery. We are still in the AP database, so we're going to use that. And we type out the query statement from the book on page 171. This piece right here is the subquery. Notice how within the where statement, where the invoice total is greater than the results of this. Now here, let me put this all up on one line. In this case, it might actually be easier to read. And then let's drop this down. So now, select these fields from the invoices where the invoice total is greater than the results of the average invoice total from invoices. So I don't want to get all the invoices that are less than the average. I want all the invoices that are above. A lot of times what you will do first is you will take what you think is going to be your subquery, and you'll probably execute that first. That way you can see what you have. So here's the average subquery is $1,800. Now when I combine that into the main query, now what I'm doing is I'm getting a listing of all of the invoices that are greater than $1,800. Okay, so on pages now 172 and 173, we see two different ways to do the same thing. We've already learned how to use a join, and there's even different ways of doing this join as well. Here is an example where the subquery is being created, and again, what I'm going to do, just to make this just the subquery a little clearer to see, is what I usually don't do. Is so now you can see and we're selecting that. See, what's going to happen is it's going to do this query first, and then the results of this query becomes then used in the second query. But the same result can actually be accomplished this way. I'll run the first version of it, and we're getting all the invoices here. And then I'm going to run the second. And matter of fact, what I probably should do, they should have added, oh, actually, wait a minute, we don't have the vendor ID. What we probably would have needed to also do is have a join where we could actually show the state on this as well. But basically, these are two different ways to get to the same results. In most cases, you're going to try to use your joins first, but when you get into more complicated logic, what you're going to do is you're going to use your subqueries. Again, there's more than one way to skin a cat. Here we're using the in operator with a subquery. That basically this subquery is going to give us a list of vendor IDs, and we want to get the vendor ID. We want to get all of the vendors within this distinct list of vendor IDs from this invoices. Basically, this is pulling a list of vendors who have invoices, because I might have vendors in my vendors file that don't have invoices on a given criteria. And then here the same thing is being done with the join. Two different ways to get the exact same information. So take a minute and read through pages 174 and 175. Execute those queries. Read. One of the things to do if you're struggling with understanding something is read it out loud. Even though you're the only person in the room, where somebody might think you're in the other room, what are you doing talking to yourself? Read it out loud. It's also true, a lot of you are, everybody here is a community college student in the CSC230 class. One of the things in one of my classes where people have to write papers, a lot of times they can catch their grammar mistakes if you take your paper and you read it out loud. When you read it to yourself, what happens is when you read it to yourself is you know what you're thinking about in your mind. And you go, da 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 da, yeah, okay, I get it, yep, and you're getting the concept. But when you slow down and you read something and speak it out loud, it actually helps you understand it better, whether it's a paper you're writing for class or even a program statement. There are a lot of times when I'll be debugging something at work, and we'll be going through the issue and through the topic, and we'll actually say da 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 da, say it out loud and get another set of eyes on it to help us really say, what's the problem here? What are we missing? Okay, so read the quick two paragraphs on page 176 and 177, and to really understand what's going on for this one, we really do need to break this down into a very viewable and readable statement. We want to end up with the invoice number, the date, and the balance due. We want to end up with it. This is information that's in the invoices table, and our where clause. And then here is our subquery. Let me get this guy down here. Now what I want to do is to make this a little clearer. Take a look at what we're doing here for the complexity of this, where what we're doing is using a comparison operator, the AND statement, along with a subquery in the initial where clause. So if we do this, and I'm going to pull this way over here. Boom. And so if you read this now, we're saying select this data from the invoices where the invoice total minus the payment total minus the credit total is greater than 0, and the invoice total, payment total, and credit total is less than a subquery. So here's the starting of the subquery. So do this subquery first, and what you will get is an answer. And then from that answer, you will then be able to use that as the criteria for your AND statement. Again, you always need to test out your subquery first, that you actually know that that's the answer that you want. So I'm going to test out my subquery, and the answer is 2,900. And if we wanted to, if we remember, I think we had a R&D, or was it ROUND? Let's put that in there. Now, so now what we're getting is right there, $2,910.95. So instead of going out to so many decimal points, a little easier to read. So again, it's going to do this select statement first in the subquery, and using the answer, which is $2,900, has part of the criteria for this comparison part where it's saying this invoice total is greater than the answer of this subquery. And then I can just take here and I can execute this top one, and I'm going to get, or in this case it's less than, sorry. Here's all the invoices that are less than the average amount of the invoices. Okay, on pages 178 and 179, they're adding a new keyword to the select statement, and that is the keyword all. The keyword all basically is saying to make sure that you give me all of the values that are true. Get the invoices larger than the largest invoice for vendor 34. So give me all of those when it is. So as you read through the section on 178, they basically are saying the not to use the all keyword. As a result, we recommend replacing the all keyword with the equivalent condition whenever it makes the query easier to use. It really is awkward. I don't know if I've ever created a select statement with the all keyword for business. Again, a lot of languages and a lot of things have stuff that's left over, or is just because it's there doesn't mean it's the best way of using something. For any future assignments, quite honestly, don't use all. Just use the explicit definition of give me this. Okay, following right along with the don't use what you just learned for the all keyword, on pages 180 and 181, don't use this new keyword any. Read through the 3 short paragraphs on page 180, and the last paragraph says, since this statement is easier to read, we recommend using statements like this one instead of any that use the any keyword. And basically the statement that they use as an example basically doesn't have the keyword in it. And it still works. And it doesn't have the join, the join on. It's actually using the explicit. So what I'm noticing is that the join on and these words any and all are all a part of a easier to read way of doing select statements. Typically, I would normally not use the join on, and I would just use a where clause and maybe some subqueries with the where clause. It becomes a lot easier to read when you're actually seeing the formula of when this ID is equal to this ID. And the book is supporting that. It's saying you can do things this way, and there's this kind of this light touch wording that they're using, but doesn't appear to be strongly recommended. And as you can tell, I kind of stumbled over this join on and the any and all because we just don't use it. Okay, so now here is a subquery that makes a lot of sense to me, not using the join, more explicit. First, do this query here to give me a select of the average invoice amount. I want to get the average invoice amount from the invoices where the vendor ID equals the invoice vendor ID. So that case is actually always going to be true. And that what we're doing is we're comparing the vendor ID in this invoices table. We're basically gathering the average amounts here and comparing it to this alias I, which is this alias up here. But so we're going to get a result of an invoice table that we can then average from the invoice total, that we would then say invoice total greater than the average from all. So we're actually subquerying the initial table to get a result to then requery that same table. Give me the averages of everything by vendor, in essence, and then pull it up to the invoices for everything. And we'd get it by vendor as well. In any query that you would do, the results are either going to be one or two things. It's either going to be true or it's going to be false. Something is either going to be greater than 1 or less than 1, or greater than 1 or not greater than 1. So there may be a situation where you say, I want to do a subquery to find out all of my invoices that are greater than X or something. But maybe what you really want is not the positive, but the negative. If I do this subquery and I get all of this, give me everybody else. That's not true. Give me the false version of that. And that is used with the keywords not exist. And that within the where clause, where this subquery doesn't exist. So if I do this subquery first, give me everybody in the main query where this isn't true. And there's the results. Okay, so now what's happening is we want to be able to get the most recent invoice date for each vendor. And to do that, what we have to do is a subquery, and that subquery will select the maximum invoice date, and then we'll get from that subquery, we'll get the invoices from that vendor with that maximum invoice date for that vendor. And again, two ways to do the same thing. Here it is explicitly with the where clause, and then here it is with the left join on. And as you know, we like the first way better. So we're going to run and execute this, and we get a result set, and we run and execute the second one, we get the exact same result set. And we're on page 166 and 167 in the book there. Okay, page 188 and 189 now allow us to do a subquery within the from. And that's kind of unusual, and I'm not sure how often we would actually do this in real life, but notice here's our from where we would put our table name, and even here notice that there's the alias for T, and that so again we have a subquery within a from, the from part of the statement. Okay, so now on pages 190, 191, 192, and 193, they talk about creating a very complex subquery and using a join. So if you take a look here, we have a select statement, and then we have another select statement, and then we have another select statement, and then we even have another select statement. So this is the result of a lot of work. And if you read through, it's actually a full page on page 190. If you read through that, you'll be able to see the reasoning for the business reasoning for what they're trying to accomplish here. Now, what's nice is on page 192 and 193, they basically take each one of these select statements and then run them individually to get a result. And they say, okay, this is true. Now I can add this and figure out the logic. So run this statement, read it through, but then what to do is go to page 192 and 93, and then go ahead and execute each of the subqueries, and you'll see how the end result works. Okay, so we've finished up now chapter 6 on subqueries, and this has just basically been a good introduction to the complexity that is available to you in MySQL, SQL Server, Oracle SQL, Oracle PL SQL. Basically, it depends upon the business problem that you're trying to solve. What data, what are the results that you are trying to get? So it's important to be very, very serious and seriously understand exactly the business problem that you're trying to solve. When you do that, you can then break that up into small units of truth. I need all of these invoices, or I need all of these records. I need to answer this question before I can then answer the next question. So the results of adding these up, or getting an average, or getting this, then gets me an answer. And then from there, that answer, I can then do another answer. There's more than one way to solve a problem. And we've seen that multiple different ways. And what I find that works the best is when I can read it and clearly understand it, and that I can speak it through, then usually the simplest, easiest to read problem is the best way to solve it. So again, you have to be very, very serious, and you have to seriously understand exactly what it is that you're doing, just as I've been very, very serious in this video as well. Let's move on to chapter 7.